I'm convinced of the enormous potential, the huge opportunity. Africa is the continent of opportunity for the 21st century.
That was U.S. Senator Chris Coons talking about the potential of Africa with our very own Neanda Savaterra, who joins me now to talk about a very big meeting of African leaders next week in Washington. Neanda, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Simon.
This is a huge meeting, African leaders meeting next week in Washington. Africa's a big deal, right?
Absolutely. We have some well-developed economies on the continent. We have South Africa, that's always been our main traditional trading partner. We have petroleum exporters like Nigeria and Kenya, that is also a well-developed economy in comparison to the rest.
Now, on the agenda, there's a lot of things on the agenda, but the four that we're going to concentrate on: security, Ebola, trade, and infrastructure. They're all a big deal. Let's start with security. Recently, we've seen Boko Haram kidnap schoolgirls. We've in the recent past seen Al-Shabaab terrorizing Kenya and doing awful things. What can this meeting achieve to improve security?
Well, the United States has cooperated with the African Union when it comes to containing the insurgent movement in Somalia, and so that's an example of how we've engaged with the continent in the past. Now, we know that the U.S. public has a very limited appetite for foreign intervention, so I suppose that's what they're going to kind of try to figure out during the summit.
And it is a very big continent. I mean, the map really doesn't show its true size. Let's listen to Senator Coons again about security.
Today, a multinational, African-led, AU-sanctioned military effort has reoccupied most of Somalia, has returned stability to Mogadishu and Kismayo, and has pushed Al-Shabaab out of much of the country.
And that's the good news, is it can be done. It's not like it's beyond hope. In Somalia, stability there, so maybe Boko Haram can be eliminated and schoolgirls don't have to be under threat anymore. The other thing that we've been hearing about, which is absolutely terrifying, is this Ebola virus, and seems to be flying everywhere.
It's pretty terrifying and pretty sudden, of course. Liberia has closed all its borders, and it looks now like the president of Sierra Leone is not coming to the summit due to this outbreak. I think they estimate that about 1,000 people have been infected, or more than 1,000, and about 600 are dead. So it's something that will have to be dealt with.
It will have to be dealt with, and I should point out that although there's no cure for this, it is possible to limit contamination by washing and using soap and water and keeping everything sterile.
Yeah.
Let's move on to trade. The U.S. has a trade deal with Africa that is great for Africa.
Absolutely.
So, but it's not really, some people say it's not really good enough for the U.S., though. Explain how it works.
Well, this trade deal gives 39 African countries tariff-free access to the U.S. market, and it's worked beautifully. They generated about $26 billion worth of imports last year. Those imports were mostly petroleum, some in textile, and some in agriculture. Now, people are happy with this trade deal, and they want to reauthorize, not reauthorize, but rather ahead of it expires next year. So they want to sort of kind of put it on the map again. The problem is that some people feel that the United States has a mindset that's more aimed towards aid than trade, right? Wow. This is not a two-way deal. The United States does not get access to African markets in the same way. So a lot of people are saying, hey, we should think about having a free trade deal. Look at the European Union. Yep. They just passed a free trade deal with about 16 African countries.
So maybe that'll happen. We'll see what happens on that. And yeah. Finally, infrastructure. This is fascinating to me. $7 billion pledged in a public-private partnership towards electricity, right? Basically, electricity. It's Power Africa. Explain.
Absolutely. It's President Obama's initiative to address the problem of energy shortage on the continent. To put it into perspective, about 70% of people in sub-Saharan Africa are without electricity, about 600 million people. And so Power Africa is an attempt to use $7 billion in grants and in loan guarantees to build energy infrastructure in 6 African countries. There's been some criticism, though, of the program.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens, see if it changes a bit during the meeting next week. The African Leaders Summit next week in Washington, D.C. Neanda Savaterra of the Wall Street Journal.